It's our weekly segment with TSN hockey insider Pierre LeBrun from his spacious den somewhere in the Greater Toronto area. Pierre, it's great to see you. Last week, you educated myself and our viewers about how injury replacements might work for the Canadian men's Olympic hockey team. Well, wouldn't you know it, Brayden Point suffers what appears to be a pretty serious injury this week. So what's the latest you can tell us about that situation?
Yeah, boy, that's got a lot of people nervous. Now, I think from a Lightning perspective, which is less important, I guess, in this conversation from where you're going, Jay, but I think they're breathing a sigh of relief in the sense that at least the season's not over, that's for sure. But from an Olympic perspective, which is what this conversation's about, there are certainly no assurances that he'll be back in time for the Olympics. It just hasn't been ruled out yet. So, you know, the Lightning feel they've dodged the worst. John Cooper, I think, gave it the most positive spin possible by saying week to week. But even at week to week, we're only 3 weeks from puck drop in Milan, so it's not like week to week is super positive either. I think it's going to be close, and obviously they'll wait closer to the Olympics to see how he's doing. But there's obviously a chance that they have to replace him, and that's a big one because I honestly think that he might have started he may still. See, I caught myself. That the plan would be for him to start where he ended the championship game in Four Nations, or at least part of that championship game, alongside Connor McDavid on the top line. And so this is a major piece. There's a reason he was named among the first 6 players last June. If he has to be replaced, there's 2 ways Team Canada can go. They can try to find the player that most has overlapping skills with Brayden Point. And is that a Wyatt Johnston, for example? Or do you go pure offensive ceiling with, you know, the young superstar Connor Bedard? You know, Seth Jarvis is another righty. You know, you look for the right side and all that stuff. Or do you take the player that you regret that you didn't take to begin with in Sam Bennett? So, and then try to, you know, rejig the lineup within what you have in terms of where Point was going to play. So 2 different avenues that Team Canada can go if they have to replace Point. But I can tell you they sure hope to not have to replace him.
Pierre, the Ottawa Senators appear to have righted the ship on the ice. 2 straight wins, a very convincing fashion over the Rangers on Wednesday night. And this follows a tumultuous time for this team off the ice in Ottawa. And you had a chance to speak with Sens GM Steve Staios earlier this week. What did you learn from your conversation?
Yeah, I met with Steve in his office on Monday morning, and can I just point out they're 2-0 since I met with him in his office on Monday morning. So, hello, Ottawa, you got my number. No, and listen, I will say I'm a big believer, Jay. I think I've told you this before, but I really believe in body language. It's not just what I'm being told in an interview that we had in his office, but I really like to study the human being across from me. And Steve Staios was so confident and measured and 0 signs of panic, you know, in what he was saying and what he was explaining to me. You don't have to agree with all of it, but I'm just saying if you're going to read someone after the week that they had last week and try to see if this is an organization that is panicking, that is not at all the sense that I got after meeting with Steve Staios. So for what that is worth. Having said that, they've dug themselves quite a hole, and obviously 2 wins in a row is huge. The Eastern Conference standings are so close, and that's why Staios feels the Senators are still in this. Clearly, their performance between now and the Olympic break was going to give him instruction as far as the trade deadline coming out of the Olympics, I think, whether or not he adds a forward up front or not. But I will say this. I came out of that interview, and by the way, he absolutely has no regrets about the statement, the mother of all statements that he put out last week. He feels strongly about defending his players and defending Linus Ullmark. So he would do that all over again, he says. But they just want to turn the page and all that and get some wins together. And so far, so good this week.
Then there's the Montreal Canadiens. What a story, Pierre. 6-2-2 in their last 10. Wednesday, they signed Alexandre Texier to a 2-year contract extension. He's been such a terrific fit with the Habs. In fact, almost everything Kent Hughes has done, Pierre, is really working out as we look at some of the significant acquisitions and extensions that this front office has gotten done just over the past year. I guess my question for you is, do you think this was Hughes and Jeff Gorton's plan all along, Pierre, to lock down guys like this to long-term deals? Or do you think that the rebuild has actually been accelerated a bit just by the fact that these guys are playing so well together?
I don't know, Jay, if that they feel the rebuild's been accelerated. Their place in the standings has been accelerated, if that makes any sense. I don't think that they thought they'd be near the top of the conference this year. I think they thought coming in that it would be another fight to get into the playoffs because they were the youngest team in the league. So from the point of view of where they are and the kind of sustainability that they've showed in their play and their consistency, they are ahead of where they thought they'd be. You know, the Tessier signing is fascinating. To your point, I mean, you know, it's the GMs who vote on the GM of the Year award, and if the GMs were voting today, there's a chance Ken Hughes might win. I mean, it's just gone that well for the moves that him and his boss Jeff Gordon have made here over the last year or two. You know, Tessier was signed out of an urgent situation in the sense they had all these injuries pile up in November. He gets his contract gets terminated by St. Louis. They sign him to $1 million for the rest of the year. And I can tell you, I think their original plan was to flip him before the March 6th trade deadline when they signed them back in November because they thought they'd be healthy by then. They'd have too many bodies. But he's played so darn well and lately on the top line, Jay, that now Alexandre Tessier as a future with the Montreal Canadiens. So it's a great story. And again, a masterclass in asset management for Ken Hughes. Where they go from here is going to be fascinating to me because I don't think they want to press the issue and get ahead of themselves before the trade deadline. You know, if there's an opportunity to add a player that can help them this year and beyond, I think they'll look at it. I mentioned the name of Blake Coleman last week. That's a name of interest. But I think they'll have an open mind. You know, at the same time, it's not the be all and end all. And I think if the Canadiens don't find the fit, I don't feel that they're going to think it's a failure if they don't add a big name before the trade deadline. So, you know, let's see what comes about here.
The Canadiens will continue their 3-game trip in Buffalo on Thursday. We'll see how they do against a resurgent Sabres team. Pierre, LeBrun, always great to visit with you. We'll chat with you next week.